Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So I wanted to talk about a topic today that I get asked about quite a lot, and that is, why am I so adamant about only collecting my video games complete in the box? And I wanted to kind of offer a perspective that maybe will speak for others. Most people perceive people that only collect complete in box to be sort of maybe elitist in terms of only wanting to collect it for the monetary value of it or just to fill space on a shelf. And I hope to talk about some points that maybe would offer a new light as to why some people, such as myself, only want most of our games complete in box. But before I get too far into it, first of all, I just want to give a quick thank you to all of you that left such nice and kind comments on my previous video. I am going through them very slowly. I haven't started reading them until today, so I've still got a long way to go, but I do appreciate all the kind feedback, and well, it's good to be back, and thank you. So let's talk about complete in box. So how did it start with me in complete in box? When did I realize that I wanted to not just get cartridges, but I wanted full boxes? Well, I think it stems back to the fact that I grew up in the 90s. That's when I was really getting into video games, and not just collecting. I wasn't collecting games back then, because when you're younger, you don't really realize that you're collecting. You kind of just buy stuff. So when I would go to the stores like EB Games or Electronics Boutique, Funko Land, The Wiz, Toys R Us, rest in peace Toys R Us, by the way. And I would see these games in the stores. The only thing that I had to judge them on were the covers. And I feel like if you started collecting games now, if you're younger and you didn't have that experience of buying games specifically based off of the cover and the back artwork or text or whatever, the bullet points on the back of the box, if you didn't grow up in a time where your decisions were based upon that solely, I feel like maybe you would have a little bit of a less understanding as to why some of us do collect complete in box, because that is one of the reasons. Yes, there were magazines, but obviously you can't get every magazine out there to see what games you want. So many of my purchases were made solely off of the box art. So, for example, when I was in Electronics Boutique when I was younger, and I spotted Rayman on the shelf back when Jaguar games were being sold brand new in the stores, I absolutely fell in love with the artwork and the character. And, well, first of all, who wouldn't love a little shiny Jaguar sticker on their box too? And this is the first time I had ever seen Rayman. I had never, really read too much about him in magazines before. I just saw this character. I was a fan of mascot platformers, and I knew then and there that I wanted a Jaguar. Unfortunately, it was a little expensive at the time, because this is still right around when it was coming out. But once they were starting to liquidate Jaguars for really cheap in stores, well, I eventually got myself a Jaguar. I think it was, getting liquidated for like $100, not too long after it came out. And that's when I, started to really appreciate what artwork can do for a game and how it can make me want to buy a game based solely on the cover. And I think that's kind of, that mentality has transitioned over the years to now, where I want to own these games complete in box, because I appreciate the artwork, I appreciate the box, I appreciate being able to pick up a game and just read the bullet points on the back of the box, as silly as they may be. Like today, it's kind of part of the experience, if you will, of buying a new game. I feel like I appreciate a game more when I can physically pick it up, hold it, touch it, see the problems with the box, the age. Maybe there's a price sticker on there that kind of tells a story. Maybe there's an old receipt that's in the box that's the seller left in there when I bought it on eBay or something, that kind of tells where this game came from, which are amazing, by the way. I just love getting old receipts with my games. It might seem kind of like a throwaway to most people, but I love seeing what somebody originally paid for a game, where it came from. So, while a box can add quite a bit of value to a game in terms of purchase price, in a lot of instances, it's worth it for me. Before I get into an example of that, let me just show you the origins of, when I realized that, hey, I want my games definitely with the box. Rayman was the start of realizing how important box art was for me. This was the first game that, when I was in Funko Land, I went up to the register to get the game, Kirby's Avalanche on the Super Nintendo, and I was just going to end up picking up the cartridge, and I'm like, wait a minute. I asked the guy at the counter, I'm like, can I go grab the box too? And that was the first time I'd ever really done that, because before that I kind of didn't mind having cartridges only or Genesis carts only, but I started becoming more and more drawn to the physical nature of what made up a video game package, the manual, the box. I don't know if this came with the manual when I got it. No, this was just the cartridge and the box. But this is the origins. This is the first game that I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go back and get that box because I want to own it. But let's get into an example of, I wouldn't say overpaying, but let's get into an example here of an instance where a box meant more to me than just being something of value. So this here, for example, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on my channel before. I honestly can't remember. Splatterhouse on the FM Towns Marty. This is a port. It's the only home console port of Splatterhouse to ever make it to a home console outside of the arcades. For the arcade version, let me rephrase. Yes, I know there's Splatterhouse on the TurboGrafx, but this is the only pretty much arcade perfect home port to end up on a home console that came out of Japan, FM Towns Marty. So this is known for being it's one of the rarest games in my collection. It's also very pricey. I paid a lot of money to be able to get this plastic clamshell box, which, funny enough, I don't know if I have the case in there. I don't. But it's just a big plastic shell that is meant to hold the jewel case. The jewel case just sits here. There's no big elaborate manual or anything like that. So why did I want this big box so much? Why did I pay, quite a price for this? Well, this kind of spoke to me. Growing up, I was also a really big fan of horror movies and monsters, and I grew up watching gory horror films on VHS. So when I saw this, I fell in love with the box art. First of all, come on, it's beautiful. Look at the font. Look at the back artwork of this with the house and everything. I just fell in love because this reminded me of the old horror VHSs when I would go to a local video rental store and I would be looking for a horror movie to rent for the weekend when I'm like 8, 9, 10 years old. What would draw me to a horror movie? Amazing artwork like this. Like if this was a movie on a shelf for rent, you bet your ass I'd be renting this movie. So this kind of spoke to me on another level, not just on the collectability side. Yes, it's rare. Yes, it's expensive. But it also means something to me a bit more personally because this reminds me of a time growing up, going out with my parents and renting old horror movies, going to my grandparents' house, who also had an extensive VHS collection. They were huge VHS collectors. They bought out VHS stores when they were going out of business. I recently inherited their horror VHS collection. So, it kind of meant more to me than just being an expensive game and something to stick on the shelf. And, people would think, oh, he just bought it to brag about it on YouTube. No, this meant more to me because it stems back to another passion that I had. And it brings me memories of, a time that no longer exists, renting big box horror movies from the VHS store. So that's an example. Let's go to another example. Zombies Ate My Neighbors on the Sega Genesis. So this is one of those games, where I played this when I was younger. I had fond memories of playing co-op of this game with my dad when I was younger. We worked so hard to beat this game. This was such a brutal game, and I just have so many memories of trying to beat this game with my dad in co-op. If you've played Zombies Ate My Neighbors before, this game is no joke, especially when you're trying to play it through for the first time or, single player especially. And, it's just a game that meant a lot to me over the years. So when very, very fond memories, and obviously being a horror and monster fan, this was such an awesome game for me back then. So many references to old movies. So when an opportunity came up for me to own this showed up on eBay a couple of years ago. I think I paid $200 or $300 for it. But let's not even let price get in the way, okay? Just being able to own a very, very rare, and I'll bring up a more enhanced picture of this for you guys so it's a little clearer to see. This is actually a alternative US box art that very few people know about for Zombies Ate My Neighbors on Super Nintendo. The history behind it, it's apparently it first came out in the details are very, very sketchy. Fewer than 100 copies are pretty much known to exist. It's incredibly rare. The history and the backstory on it isn't concrete, but apparently it released in New York City for a period of time only or something, and something about Mexico. I don't know. Google it, you'll find out some information on it, but let's just say it's super, super limited. So when an opportunity came up for me to own an alternative box for a game that meant so much to me, even though it wasn't an original copy that I had when I was a kid, like the Genesis version, just the meaning behind the game for me and growing up and playing it made this, owning a physical copy of such a awesome cover art, first of all. Once again, I hate keep showing examples of stuff themed around monsters, but it just shows you guys that it speaks to me on another level. It's not just because it's rare and expensive, it's because this game means something to me, and that's why I wanted it. And sometimes, collecting complete in box of rare stuff like this has its advantages. When I paid $200 or $300, I think I paid $250 for it, actually. I can't remember. This is now valued at over $1,000. So yes, it does have its upsides when it comes to the collectability purposes. Collecting complete in box, especially someone like me that got into collecting complete in box 20 years ago, a lot of that stuff that I bought back then for almost nothing is now super valuable. So yes, it has its collectability purposes, but it also has a lot of sentimental value. So let's talk about the NES and a recent revelation that I had. So for those of you that may remember an old video of mine that I did a huge pickup video of a whole bunch of NES cartridges. I kind of splurged on this eBay auction, and for $200 I was able to get like 150 NES carts or something completely ridiculous. So I ended up with this huge collection of NES games that I had no sentimental attachment to. I grew up playing an NES, but I never owned one until I was maybe like 12 or 13. I mostly played it at family's house. So my attachment to NES wasn't quite what, my attachment to the Sega Genesis would be. So I ended up with this huge lot of games, and I barely touched any of them. I just found that having cartridges only, for me personally, didn't hold as much value as being able to personally pick out games. Okay, so this is something that I do a lot now. I no longer really buy in lots. I don't really like to buy big, bulky lots anymore because it feels less personable. It seems less... I feel less attachment to the games I'm picking up. So I sold off pretty much all of those NES carts. I only have a small stack of them left. And 2 years ago, I decided to start handpicking my NES games. I would judge my purchases based on cover art, based on research that I did on a game, how much I think I would like a game, and being able to buy a game like Air Fortress, one of my childhood favorites, complete in the box, just meant so much more to me than just the cartridge. I know this may be hard to comprehend for some people, but there's just something about being able to flip through the manual and read the back of this box and look at the cover art, hold the cover art in my hands, and not just have it be on a small little label on a cartridge that really helps me appreciate the games. I hate to keep using the word appreciate, but I'm having a hard time finding another word that would kind of convey what these boxes and manuals kind of mean to me. But having just a cartridge and having a complete in box version means that I'm more inclined to play the game a bit more, be willing to understand the game a bit more, give the game a bit more time, because I know it may also seem hard to comprehend, but when I have to invest a little bit more money in a game to get it in this kind of condition, it means that I'm also more inclined to be willing to spend more time playing that game. If I spend $5 on a cartridge, I may play it for 10 minutes and say, it's not that great, toss it aside. Whereas if I spend $20, I might be like, all right, I'm not just going to play this game for 5 minutes, because first of all, I invested $20 into this game. So let's sit down, let's flip through the manual, let's give this game its time. And I've found through the last couple of years, doing that actually lets me discover games that initially don't start out to be that great, but they turn out to be a really, really awesome game that I end up really enjoying, because I did end up giving it a bit more time than I normally would have, because I felt sort of, not like pressured, but I felt like I needed to give it more time, because I put myself into that place where, what if I bought this game at retail back when it came out? Would you play it for 10 minutes and then move on? No. You're going to give the game its time to shine. You're going to play it for, a day, 2 days at least, because you're spending all that money. So that is kind of an example of how I'm reapproaching my collection, and how I have no problem letting go of an entire NES collection to slowly piece it back together one by one, complete in box, if that means that it's going to help me appreciate these games on another level. And I plan on doing a video that kind of goes through some of the NES games that I've been playing because of this new recent discovery and how I've reapproached collecting certain games. Now, what would I tell you if I said that recently I went cartridge only? Cartridge only. I abandoned collecting a system complete in box because, well, it was just too pricey. Sometimes, as cool as it is to own these games complete in box, sometimes it just gets too expensive. Certain systems are just too pricey. And sometimes I felt like the games were just simply not holding their value for what they were and the price they were asking for. So last year, I actually made a switch from Game Boy collecting, not Game Boy Color, not Game Boy Advance, because some of those games are still relatively affordable, but regular Game Boy. I made the decision to go cartridge only because completing box collecting for Game Boy is just completely unrealistic for me. Games that are $5 or $10 cart only are no joke going for like $300 or more in some cases because they're rare to get the box, and it's just ridiculous. So what kind of convinced me to do this? Well, I was at a convention, and I was getting quite jealous of people that were able to flip through bins and boxes of loose Game Boy games. I mean, it just looked like so much fun, you know. And I hear this sound, like, right, stacks of Game Boy cartridges kind of just getting flipped through or tossed around like this. It was just this auditory response, and just seeing people flipping through bins of games and picking out these gems where they're once again judging it just based on the label or the cover, essentially, and taking a chance and a gamble for a few dollars, and maybe finding a rare game for a few dollars that normally something that goes for $12 they get for $5. I mean, that just was so alluring to me, and I hope maybe one day, you know, I'll be able to do this with other systems. You know, maybe Game Boy is a start, but I did make the switch to collecting loose only for Game Boy because, well, it's something that I've always kind of wanted to do, and being able to collect cart only because of simply being able to flip through boxes and bins of Game Boy games at conventions. You know, it just kind of was fun to me, and I don't get that same appeal. I know this sounds so weird to some of you probably, but I just don't get the same appeal for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis because most people also don't tend to throw those in a bin. But also keep in mind, for Game Boy, most people back then didn't keep their boxes for Game Boy games, so most people's nostalgia and memories of Game Boy are simply owning the cartridges and, you know, flipping through your bag of Game Boy games, or, you know, however you kept your Game Boy games in a little case, or, like, I don't know, box that you kept them in. So in a way, it didn't feel quite as weird for me to go cart only for Game Boy because, well, it seemed more normal, more natural. Hopefully this is making sense to you guys. So let's talk about imports. So you're like, but Pete, if you're so into reading the backs of boxes and the bullet points and the manuals, like, why do you collect complete in box imports? Well, let me show you an example. Maybe this will help convince you a little bit. Would you be able to pass up a box that looked like this? Nubo on the Game Boy. Look at that face. Look at this cute box. Bright yellow. Adorable. Alright, now let me show you something. I don't know who in their right minds would be able to turn down what was on the back of this box. Nubo riding a giraffe. Worth every penny. Okay? So Japanese box art, sometimes you got to make exceptions. Another exception that you have to make, a game such as this on the Famicom. Getsu Fumaden. I mean, I can't read the damn box. I can't read the manual. But I'll be darned if that isn't one of the most beautiful lenticular covers that I have ever seen. You would never be able to get this through cartridge only. You'd never be able to get it through emulation. There's just, first of all, I love lenticular covers. So sometimes, yes, collecting complete in box can come down to just the cool appeal of the box art, you know? Being able to look at this and flip it like this, I mean, it's just, you just can't get that with cartridge only, you know? And to me, that's worth the price. It also tells a story of the time of, you know, having this sit on a shelf in Japan and, you know, trying to stand out from the crowd and having to put a lenticular cover on your game to try and stand out and sell copies. You know, it's kind of a cool history that you don't really see too many lenticular covers in stores anymore for games. Actually, most covers for games these days are just littered with advertisements on the front cover and the back cover. Heck, you're lucky if you even get a manual today without having to pay extra for like a limited backer version of it or something. It's just a product of the time, and yeah, sure, it might be nostalgia, but sometimes you can't help nostalgia. And sometimes you just want boxes for games. It's like, why do you want boxes for Game Boy games? It just takes up space. But, you know, once again, sometimes it can just be fun to own these weird time capsules of when artwork like this was possible on store shelves as a retail game. So there you have it. I mean, I don't really know how much more I can say without rambling on too much to kind of convey this to you guys, but just know that sometimes when people say that they're complete in box collectors, it isn't just about the value of the game. It's the just as an example, I got it sitting right here. Why the hell not? It's not really the best example of complete in box collecting, because I think most people for disc only, like, you're not gonna collect disc only for PS1 or PS2. If you do, then I'm sorry for you. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay if you collect disc only. But, you know, for example, why Eco? I already have the North American version. Why would I spend money on the PAL version? Because Eco is my favorite game of all time, and it's just the sentimental attachment to being able to own an alternative version that I normally would have never been able to see. PAL exclusive that comes with these art cards and everything. I mean, it's just, as a fan of this game, even though, actually I can play this because I have a PAL PS2, and I did play this, and exploited some of the glitches that are in this version and not in the North American version. But even if I couldn't play this, just being able to own a version of this game that means so much to me, that's more than worth the entry price. So anyway, guys, if there's one thing that you're going to take away from this video, if you ever feel the need for some long D, just make sure that you pick up a long box version of D on the 3DO, because who can resist a long D box on the 3DO? Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for all the great welcome back. I appreciate it.